So I'm going to guide us through the mountain meditation from mindfulness-based stress reduction. It feels particularly useful to me right now. But if at any point you find it to be too annoying, if you're hearing my voice too much, feel free to just tune me out and do whatever practice works best for you. Then we'll take a break, probably at about 7:35. We'll see how we're doing till about 7:45. And then I will have some thoughts to share. And hopefully there will be some time for us to talk to each other. Don't worry, not breakout group Zoomers, don't panic. It's okay, but just a, open discussion. So, all right. So now I'm going to invite you to move your body into a comfortable position. If you're a longtime meditator, you know that phrase well. And begin by sensing into the support you have from the chair or the cushion. Paying attention to the actual sensations of contact. Finding a position of stability and poise. Upper body balanced over your hips, and shoulders in a comfortable but alert posture. Hands on your lap or your knees, and arms hanging by their own weight, like heavy curtains, stable and relaxed. Actually sensing into your body, feeling your feet, legs, hips, lower and upper body. Arms, shoulders, neck, and head. And when you're ready, bringing awareness to breath, to actual physical sensations, feeling each breath as it comes in and goes out. letting the breath be just as it is, without trying to change or regulate it in any way. Allowing it to flow easily and naturally with its own rhythm and pace. Knowing you are breathing perfectly well right now, nothing for you to do. Allowing the body to be still and sitting with a sense of dignity, a sense of resolve, a sense of being complete, whole in this very moment, with your posture reflecting this sense of wholeness. As you sit here, letting an image form in your mind's eye of the most magnificent or beautiful mountain you know or have seen or can imagine. Letting it gradually come into greater focus. And even if it doesn't come in as a visual image, allowing the sense of this mountain and feeling its overall shape, its lofty peak or peaks high in the sky. The large base rooted in the bedrock of the earth's crust. Its steep or gently sloping sides. Noticing how massive it is, how solid, how unmoving, how beautiful, whether from afar or up close. Perhaps your mountain has snow blanketing its top and trees reaching down to the base. Or rugged granite sides. There may be one peak or a series of peaks, or with meadows and high lakes. Observing it, noting its qualities, and when you feel ready, seeing if you can bring the mountain into your own body, sitting here so that your body and the mountain in your mind's eye become one. So that as you sit here, you share in the massiveness and the stillness and the majesty of the mountain. You become the mountain. Grounded in the sitting posture, your head becomes the lofty peak, supported by the rest of the body and affording a panoramic view. Your shoulders and arms, the sides of the mountain. Your pelvis and legs, the solid base, rooted to your cushion or your chair. Experiencing in your body a sense of uplift from deep within your pelvis and spine. With each breath, as you continue sitting, becoming a little more a breathing mountain. Alive and vital, yet unwavering in your inner stillness, completely what you are. Beyond words and thought, a centered, grounded, unmoving presence. As you sit here, becoming aware of the fact that as the sun travels across the sky, The light and shadows and colors are changing virtually moment by moment in the mountain stillness. And the surface teems with life and activity. Streams, melting snow, waterfalls, plants, and wildlife. As the mountain sits, seeing and feeling how night follows day and day follows night, the bright, warming sun, followed by the cool night sky, studded with stars, and the gradual dawning of a new day. Through it all, the mountain just sits, experiencing change in each moment, constantly changing, yet always just being itself. It remains still as the seasons flow into one another, and as the weather changes moment by moment and day by day. Calmness abiding all change. In summer, there is no snow on the mountain except perhaps for the very peaks or in crags shielded from direct sunlight. In the fall, the mountain may wear a coat of brilliant fire colors. In winter, a blanket of snow and ice. In any season, it may find itself at times enshrouded in clouds or fog, or pelted by freezing rain. People may come to see the mountain and comment on how beautiful it is, or how it's not a good day to see the mountain, that it's too cloudy or rainy or foggy or dark. None of this matters to the mountain, which remains at all times its essential self. Clouds may come and clouds may go. Tourists may like it or not. The mountain's magnificence and beauty are not changed one bit by whether people see it or not. Seen or unseen, in sun or clouds, broiling or frigid, day or night. It just sits, being itself. at times visited by violent storms, buffeted by snow and rain and winds of unthinkable magnitude. Through it all, the mountain sits. In the same way as we sit in meditation, we can learn to experience the mountain. We can embody the same central, unwavering stillness and groundedness in the face of everything that changes in our own lives over seconds, over hours, over years. In our lives and in our meditation practice, we experience constantly the changing nature of mind and body and of the outer world. We have our own periods of light and darkness. Activity and inactivity are moments of color and are moments of drabness. It's true that we experience storms of varying intensity and violence in the outer world and in our own minds and bodies, buffeted by high winds, by cold and rain. We endure periods of darkness and pain, as well as the moments of joy and uplift. Even our appearance changes constantly. By becoming the mountain in our meditation practice, we can link up with its strength and stability and adopt them for our own. We can use its energies to support our energy, to encounter each moment with mindfulness and equanimity and clarity. It may help us to see that our thoughts and feelings, our preoccupations, our emotional storms and crises, even the things that happen to us are very much like the weather on the mountain. We tend to take it all personally, but its strongest characteristic is impersonal. The weather of our own lives is not to be ignored or denied. It is to be encountered, honored, felt, known for what it is, and held in awareness. And in holding it in this way, we come to know a deeper silence and stillness and wisdom. So in the minutes that remain, continuing to sustain the mountain meditation on your own, in silence, moment by moment. So any of you who have heard me speak know that I'm very inspired by Thich Nhat Hanh. And that's not going to change tonight. And he's known for his teaching of the way out is in. And I just wanted to see, before I get started talking, with the wisdom in the room, what do you think that means? The way out is in. Can someone help with that? Darby, I see you can. Do you want it?
I don't know, but I'll.
Well, so you can say that, yeah.
Okay, so the way out, I think of as like, how do I get out of this mess? How do I get out of this predicament. And the way out of pain or predicaments or difficulty is to go inward.
Nice. That sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah. What others hear that? When dealing with difficulties, and the way to get out of it is to go inward. Anyone else want to add to that? The way out, I've heard the way out, like you have to go through, but this is even different than that. Have most of you heard that from him? The way out is in. Okay. Well, hopefully it'll be even a little more clear. Thank you, Darby. So for me, I think that statement captures, thank you, so much of Buddhist teaching. And the Buddha taught about suffering and how to end suffering. But he didn't teach on how to fix things or situations or people, much as we might have wished to have that sort of instruction. And there were no instructions on how to make the world better, except really one all-encompassing instruction. Work within yourself to create balance through awareness of the truth that all things are connected and nothing is permanent, thereby increasing compassion for self and others, and then share that with the world. That's sort of my, put it in one sentence as best I can summary. And Thich Nhat Hanh also said, letting go gives us freedom. And freedom is the only condition for happiness. If in our heart we still cling to anything, anger, anxiety, or possessions, we cannot be free. Right? That sounds true. But I have this great pillow, that when I have that pillow at night, I better. And every morning, I really need to have a cup of coffee and one small donut hole with my almonds. And really, life would be great. And I don't think they're watching, so it's okay for me to say this. Life would be great if my neighbors wouldn't order something from Amazon every day, up and down the driveway, and then leave a huge pile of trash for the trash pickup on our shared driveway. That would be great. Oh, and I would be much happier if everyone in this country and around the world would get along. Letting go gives us freedom, and freedom is the only condition for happiness. If in our heart we still cling to anything, anger, anxiety, or possessions, we cannot be free. So recently, excuse me, I've been contemplating the word annihilation. Annihilation to me is the sudden, deep realization of impermanence and of how much I'm clinging to outside of myself to try to feel okay, brought on by an extreme event in life. I first really contemplated this word 13 years ago when I was diagnosed with cancer. I read a book entitled Anti-Cancer by David Servan Schreiber. He was a doctor who was diagnosed with brain cancer. He offered thoughts and supportive research on cancer and how we can live our lives with the hope of reducing our risk. And as I was reading, he described how in the moment of learning you have cancer, everything that felt normal in your life is annihilated. Annihilated. Not just stressed, gone. At the time, I was raising kids, going to soccer practice, going to work, and worrying about the day-to-day concerns of life. Those day-to-day concerns seem so very important. Then cancer. I remember thinking, how is this possible? How am I vulnerable? There was a deep experience of how nothing was certain. And those day-to-day concerns suddenly felt pretty meaningless. The only thing that remained was the love of those for whom I cared. It's like being carved out of life and watching everyone else continue. But then you realize they are not so different than you. They just don't know. Really know that nothing is permanent. No one escapes the pain of this. In Anti-Cancer, Servan Schreiber states, until we have brushed up against mortality, life seems boundless, and we'd prefer to keep it that way. It seems that there will always be time to set out in search of happiness. First, I have to get my degree, pay off my loans, let the children grow up, retire. I'll worry about happiness later. When we put off till tomorrow the quest for the essential, we may find life slipping through our fingers without ever having savored it. Another societally based example of annihilation is 9/11. Like cancer diagnosis, the US was humming along in a day-to-day events when suddenly everything changed. This misperception that we were separate and safe from events around the world became clear. I believe we continue to experience the impact of that event in our society. The underlying issues that created that event and how we responded to it have not been worked through. And of course, COVID. In that situation, the whole of the world was impacted. There was nowhere to go to get away from the problem. Everything stopped, and there was so much suffering. Like 9/11, in my opinion, we have not done the work to address the lingering trauma with this annihilation either. We just tried to go back to normal, like it never happened. The trauma researcher and educator Gabor Mate recently published a book entitled The Myth of Normal. Something he said stood out to me. Just because we experience something as normal does not mean it's healthy or wholesome. I thought that was really powerful. It might be familiar and what we're used to, but that doesn't make it really good for us. So I've been contemplating annihilation again in these times as I watch the current administration tear apart what seemed like the basic foundations of a working, imperfect government. To me, what I had perceived as stable and foundational is not. There are huge amounts of uncertainty as to what will happen going forward, and this is embedded in the environment, the environmental changes we are all experiencing. I do not assume that what I'm experiencing is true for everyone, but I do think it's likely that everyone will experience something at some point in their lives that feels like annihilation of their foundations. It is my hope that what we talk about this evening can be useful in some way. So annihilation is obviously a bad thing. Yes? Heard a no. I mean, I would not wish this feeling on anyone or for myself. The time of my diagnosis was horrible and difficult. And yet, it's because of that experience of annihilation that I am on this path with you tonight. I honestly wouldn't be here. Within the experience of annihilation lies the opportunity for freedom. It can be hard, painful work, but when everything is undone, we become free to connect with what remains. Again, from Servan Schreiber, I remember something extraordinary happening as I lay there contemplating the smoke from my little Indian cigarettes. I didn't really want to sleep. I was caught up in my thoughts when suddenly I heard my own voice speaking in my head, gently, with self-assurance, conviction, clarity, a certitude that I didn't recognize. It wasn't me, and yet it was definitely my voice. Just as I was repeating, it can't be happening to me, it's impossible. The other voice said, you know what, David? It's perfectly possible. And it's all okay. Something happened then that was both astonishing and incomprehensible. From that second onward, I was no longer paralyzed. It was obvious, yes, it was possible. It was part of the human experience. Many others had experienced before me, and I wasn't special. There was nothing wrong with being simply, completely human. It's perfectly possible, and it's all okay. I definitely am not suggesting we smile, buck up, and go around shouting, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger," and all will be well. Absolutely not. A great deal of self-compassion is needed during these times of living through the cracking of our foundations. We use our compassionate, mindful practice to allow what we are feeling to be felt as much as it feels safe to do so, little by little. Self-compassion invites us to respond. And if you want to do this with me, my dear anger, I see you. My dear anxiety, I'm here for you. Just noticing whatever emotion that you may be experiencing and holding it in a loving embrace. Knowing you're there for you. Thich Nhat Hanh taught that freedom from suffering is found only when we let go of our attachments to everything. In so doing, we finally rest in what is our true home. The way out is in. The way out of the turmoil and all the suffering that comes with it is within us, not outside us. We have inside of us always, always a calm and balanced center. It's not something we need to go searching for or even cultivate. What needs cultivating is our ability to drop back into that ever-present calm center. Bessel van der Kolk, noted expert on trauma, shares that one thing that made a difference for people who experienced 9/11 firsthand, excuse me, as to whether they would develop PTSD or not, was whether they had a safe home to return to. I thought that was so fascinating. When he studied people who had lived through 9/11, those who had a home, to go back to where things were basically safe, generally didn't develop PTSD at the same rates. If they had a safe home, they could work with the intense reactions to what they had experienced. It was still horrible, but they had greater capacity to work with their thoughts and emotions. To access our true home, John Kabat-Zinn, in his book, Wherever You Go, There You Are, invites the practice of stopping and dying to life. In other words, practicing annihilating everything on purpose. He says the funny thing about stopping is that as soon as you do it, here you are. Things get simpler. In some ways, it's as if you died and the world continued on. If you did die, all your responsibilities and obligations would immediately evaporate. Their residue would somehow get worked out without you. No one else can take over your unique agenda. It would die or peter out with you, just as it has for everyone else who has ever died. He goes on to say, by taking a few moments to die on purpose, to the rush of time while you're still living, you free yourself to have time for the present. By dying now to the past and the future in this way, you actually become more alive. Realizing that this moment is the only moment available to you or to any of us ever. Why not inhabit it while you have the chance and see what unfolds in the here and now? So when we experience these life events that feel annihilating, is it possible to practice letting go of our attachments to access the freedom within? Letting go of our attachments, accepting that things are as they are, is not giving up. It's not inaction and not caring for the well-being of others. In his book, The Art of Living, Thich Nhat Hanh discusses aimlessness, which is one of the doors of liberation. Aimlessness does not mean inaction. It means not putting something in front of us to chase after. I really love that description. It really helped me to visualize, like, what am I taking, thinking, feeling, believing, and then putting it in front of me, and then I'm chasing it, right? What do I want to be different? What am I grasping? What am I craving? Thich Nhat Hanh says this is the meaning of aimlessness. The peace, freedom, compassion, and loving kindness we radiate already helps those around us to suffer less. We are not passive. To be passive means to be pulled, pushed, and swayed by circumstances or the people around us. But our freedom, and I like this word, and sovereignty means that we don't become a victim of circumstances. With compassion and insight, we ask ourselves in this situation, what can I do to stop things getting worse? How can I help the situation improve? When we know that we're doing our best on the path of relieving suffering, it is possible to be at peace every step along the way. To me, this sounds like connecting to agency and letting go a sense of helplessness in the face of destabilization. Letting go gives us freedom, and freedom is the only condition for happiness. If in our heart we still cling to anything, anger, anxiety, or possessions, we cannot be free, and the way out is in. Now, I'd like to do something a little bit different for our group, which is guide a practice in the tradition of Plum Village, Thich Nhat Hanh's organization, monastery in France. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a statement that will be an invitation for a contemplation, and I'll ring the bell after I offer that statement and allow us to pause for a minute, and then I'll share another one and ring the bell, okay? Hopefully that'll make sense. So this is a guided meditation on impermanence. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I'm breathing out. In, out. Aware of my body, I breathe in. Seeing impermanence of my body, I breathe out. Body, impermanent. Aware of the planet Earth, I breathe in. Seeing the impermanence of the planet Earth, I breathe out. The planet Earth, impermanent. Aware of the human species, I breathe in. Seeing impermanence of the human species, I breathe out. The human species, impermanent. Aware of governments, I breathe in. Seeing impermanence of governments, I breathe out. Governments, impermanent. Embracing the impermanence of everything, I breathe in. Thanks to impermanence, everything is possible. I breathe out. Impermanence, hope. Thank you for trying that little different experience and for your attention and listening.